And today, I thought I'd spend some time showing you how to make a fantasy bread that I absolutely love. And it's called orsi piccoli, and it translates to little bears. And you know, in Italy, there are a lot of fanciful kinds of breads that are made. The traditional breads are just made with flour and water and yeast and salt. But for holidays and special occasions, there are all kinds of shaped breads, and the orsi piccoli are perfect to make with children. Now, how do you do it? Well, you start with some milk, and here I've got, about 1 1/3 cups of milk in a little saucepan. And I want to heat that up just until it's warm. I don't want that to be hot, because if it's too hot, then I'm going to kill my yeast. And it's just about where I want it. I want that just lukewarm. So now I'm going to turn that off and pour it into my little bowl here, you see. And in it goes. And then I can add the yeast. And there's a tablespoon of yeast just sprinkled very gently. Put it in a warm spot, not too hot. And if you go back to that after sitting on the sofa for 10 minutes, you might notice that it's a little foamy and chalky. And it'll look something like this. Now here's a yeast that's been sitting around for about 5 or 10 minutes. And can you see that little foamy stuff on the top there? That means that the yeast is active and it's working. So now I'm ready to go ahead with the rest of this recipe. So there's my yeast. And now I need my flour. So in a bowl here I have, about 5 1/4 cups of unbleached flour. And then to that, I want some sugar. And here's about 2/3 cup of sugar. So you notice I'm putting all the dry ingredients together. So that goes in. And now I just mix it around with my hands. And if you were going to do this at home with kids, this is a great way to make bread. And here I have a stick of butter. That's 8 tablespoons for all you kids that are listening. And all that goes in, you see. And I've got it at room temperature, so that would make it a little easier for me to work with. So in it goes. And now I just want to mix that up, you see, with my hands. And I want to get this to a coarse consistency. So you want to make sure that you've worked the butter well into the flour mixture. Now I can add my yeast mixture, and here it is. And I'm going to put it all in. Now, I might find that I have to add, a little bit of water to this. Then you can take it out onto a floured board. So I'm going to get rid of this and sprinkle my board with a little flour. Now that's important because you don't want the dough to stick. So now I've got my mass of dough, and what you want to do is now get a smooth ball of dough. I have to put it in an oiled bowl. And when I do that, I use some olive oil because that's what my grandmother used. And in the bottom it goes. And then just brush it all around or move it all around with your hand. And then take the dough and wipe the bowl. Just turn it in the bowl and then turn it over. And then you want to cover that. This is what it looks like when it's risen, you see. Isn't that beautiful? Now, what kid wouldn't want to put their fingers into that? And now this is just maybe a couple hours later, you see. And when I can do this, and those indentations stay, I know that dough is ready. So I'll clean off my board here a little bit, because after all, we don't want to be a slob in the kitchen. So there. Now, a little more flour. And now I can turn this out. And just look at this. Who wouldn't want to play with this? Look at how soft and beautiful that is. And it is so fluffy that now we can really move this dough. And you just want to give it, again, a nice light kneading. I just take off 4 balls for each bear. So there's 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to set this aside and later on work with that. Now, when I make these, of course, I make them for my family, the kids, even my husband loves these. And you want to start with a ball of dough that you can just sort of move around in your hand like this. And then put the dough down and sort of pinch the dough. You see what I'm doing here? Bring the dough up on itself, because you don't care what this looks like on the underside, but you do care what it looks like on the top. So you want to continue like that, and then I'm going to put this here so you can see it. Get out a greased cookie sheet, and there's one ball, and now my bear is beginning to take shape. The kids would probably do a better job. And there is, oh, right there, his little nose. So now those have to rise again. So you want to cover them and let them rise, about 20 minutes. You don't want to let them over-rise now. And when they're risen, you see, they'll look like this. And now we have to do something to jazz them up a little bit. And that is to give them a little glaze. So what I want is an egg in a bowl, 1 egg, and about a tablespoon of milk or so. I just want to whisk that up. See, I'm going to paint each bear with the milk glaze, and that's going to give it a nice shiny coat. And again, this is something that children love to do. So then all you want to do, you see, is paint each one, and this really makes these little guys come alive. So I use currants when I'm doing this for kids, but if I'm doing this for adults, I might use peppercorns. But for kids, I like to use currants. And then we have to add some sugar. Now here's some coarse brown sugar that I'm just sprinkling over to the top. That's going to give that a nice texture. So they need to be cooked in a 350-degree preheated oven. And you want to let them cook there, about 20 or 25 minutes, or until they're just nicely browned and glazed looking. And then, when you can't wait 1 minute longer and the house smells absolutely wonderful, they'll look something like this. And I don't know what kid could resist this. And now I can just give them their final touch. And what I like to do is just put a little ribbon on them. And depending on what season of the year it is, I might give them, a red ribbon for maybe Valentine's Day or Christmas, or red, white, and green, because after all, these are Italian bears. But you can use your imagination and do whatever you want, but you have to admit, they do look awful cute. So you want to be real careful now about getting these off. Now let me show you how you do that. First, you say a prayer, and then you get your spatula carefully under one of these because they're very fragile, and lift gently. And then just put them on a cooling rack to cool.